We're live.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody. We tried something new this time. Instead of me pressing go live, we had Micah press it. And so
it was very exciting. I felt very powerful.
It was maybe mistimed. I was gonna do this. Like I was gonna wait for you to press it, and then I was gonna do this.
And then you're gonna hide. Oh no, where'd Pat go?
Pop up. There's so much we can do.
To the Sustainability Happy Hour presented by the School of Global Environmental Sustainability, also known as SoGES. My name is Micah. I'm the communication specialist here at the school. And this is my co-host.
This is Pat Keys, lead scientist at SoGES.
And school has started this week. That's really exciting. I'm still at my house, though.
Yeah, me too.
Do you go on campus at all, or are you staying remote?
No, I'm like 100% remote. Like unless I have a computer on campus that's busy like running a model. And so if I have to, if that crashes, I can go inside and get that fixed, but that's about all I'll do.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, I hope anybody who's on campus or has had classes, hope you're all having a good first week.
Yep.
Friday already, that's crazy.
I know, yeah. Okay, so to start things off, we typically have a fun fact, which I forget every time, but I remembered this time. Micah, what's your fun fact?
Well, so I've been thinking a lot about the Colorado wildfires, which makes me think about my time interning with the Forest Service. Mm-hmm. I had a really great time doing some communications internships with the U.S. Forest Service. And so my fun fact is related to that. I helped change my very first tire in a U.S. experimental forest in the Black Hills. We got stranded out there with a flat tire, and then like our jack like stripped the wheel, and then we were out there, and then a 7-hour day turned into a 12-hour day. But if Jen Hayes or Mike Battaglia are watching right now, I remember, and thank you for teaching me how to change a tire.
That's awesome. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like, what's an experimental forest?
Yeah, so an experimental forest, at least this is what I'm remembering from my time there, is a set of forest that is designated for experiments. So there are different, they're doing different, they're applying different management techniques in different areas of the forests. So that they can monitor those sites and see what those management techniques are doing over the long term. And this one happened to be in the Black Hills. Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. That's a nice segue, actually. In terms of, are you done? I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Okay, so that's a nice segue because my fun fact is that because of the pandemic, the Poudre School District is closed, and my son, who's 5, going on 6, is started kindergarten, which means now he's attending kindergarten remotely, but here. And so my fun fact is sort of that I became a kindergarten teacher this week, assistant teacher. I don't want to pretend to be a kindergarten teacher. They are incredible people. But so I got to help my son attend kindergarten, which was kind of fun. The whole like raising your hand to talk. But the reason that it was a nice segue is because also it turns out kindergartners can learn very quickly how to use the mute and unmute button, which is like, as you can imagine, in a kindergarten classroom is like critical, right? Like, you definitely want all of the 5-year-olds to be like, I have a dog, and to be able to mute themselves quickly if needed. And I think that a lot of people, apparently including myself, need to go back to kindergarten to learn how to properly use a mute button. Because already in 3 days of class, my 5-year-old is just like, unmute, I have a question, and then mute again.
Wow.
I know. So really the fun fact is that kindergartners can be good unmuters.
Now,
is that fun? I don't know. That's a fact.
Kindergarten's fun. Therefore, that's a fun fact.
There you go.
They haven't figured out how to mute the teacher yet, have they?
No, I think that probably comes with like the junior high level, like technology capability.
And like the sassiness of the junior high level as well.
The sassiness. Another fun fact, though, is that on Friday, this is a long fun fact. They don't have a lot of class on Fridays, which sort of means it's like, well, what are we going to do? So we went for a hike today as part of like, I called it recess, like extended recess. We went for a hike, and that was really fun.
Outdoor enrichment time.
Outdoor enrichment time, right? And I can't use sunscreen, which is why I'm sunburned.
Well, that was all very fun. Now we should move into
serious. It's
less
a serious
fun territory,
less fun,
known as the news headlines.
The news headlines.
So
we need to have like we need some special effects that like flash across like news headlines. This just in.
That would be great.
Yeah, that sounds complicated.
So I've got 5 news articles that I'm going to go through real fast with you. They're going to start out pretty depressing, and then we're going to end on a positive note.
Okay, good.
Here's our first one. This one comes from climate.gov. It's the NOAA Science and Information for a Climate Smart Nation. A Colorado summer, drought, wildfires, and smoke in 2020. We were mentioning the fires before. Multiple large wildfires have broken out across western Colorado during July and August, burning hundreds of thousands of acres, shutting down highways, and billowing smoke hundreds of miles across the state. The 4 largest wildfires in the state, as of August 19th, burned through over 170 acres of western Colorado. The largest fire, the Pine Gulch fire, was started by lightning on July 31st, and it has burned over 125,000 acres. And this article goes into some detail about why are they so bad this year. There's no one single answer. It is a combination of climate and environmental factors. The big one is drought. At least a quarter of the state has been in drought since October 2019. And the end result of all that lack of moisture and all this heat that we've been experiencing is a lot of dry vegetation. And on top of that, to make matters worse, last spring and summer in Colorado were actually wetter than average. So things grew. So that meant there's more vegetation available to dry out and become fuel for wildfire. Looking to the future,
and that's something I don't know if we'll actually get to this later on in the show, but our guest today is an expert on the future of kind of the changes in part of the hydrologic cycle. And so maybe we'll be able to talk a little bit about this, probably not the fire side so much, but maybe we can talk about how the changing hydrologic cycle in the future might lead to this sort of feast or famine sort of phenomena in terms of vegetation.
Right. And then looking to the future, the research suggests that climate change will cause an increase in these very large fires. Our next article comes from the Washington Post, also natural disaster related. Hurricane Laura's rapid intensification is a sign of warming climate, scientists say. So Hurricane Laura started out as a Category 1 hurricane, dangerous but not likely to cause major damage. And then 24 hours later, it was unrecognizable. It had rocketed into a high-end Category 4 storm with wind speeds of nearly 145 miles per hour. And this says that it was one of the fastest transformations on record in the Gulf of Mexico. And experts call this phenomenon rapid intensification, when a hurricane goes from one category to another very quickly. And they're saying it's happening more frequently, thanks in part to warming ocean temperatures driven by climate change. And the speed with which these storms can morph can complicate both weather forecasting and the emergency responses. Your window of evacuation becomes very small when what you thought was going to be a manageable storm turns into an unmanageable storm. And so scientists are documenting the climate link between that. A 2019 study in the journal Nature documented a trend towards more rapidly intensifying hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean between 1982 and 2009, and used a model that determined it would be unlikely that intensification would be unlikely without human-caused climate change. So, and I know at this point, I read something that Hurricane Laura has now downgraded to a tropical storm. I think it lost some speed when it hit land. But, you know, I've been reading things all spring saying this hurricane season is going to be like one of the most active ones. And I think we're kind of starting to see that play out. And then our last. And
just to chime in, that's again, some of the changes related to what's driving changes in hurricanes, I think we'll try and touch on a little bit later on.
Right. And then Earth has lost 28 trillion tons of ice in less than 30 years. I'm just piling on all of the bad news. This one comes from The Guardian. A total of 28 trillion tons of ice have disappeared from the surface of the Earth since 1994. And to put that in context, one of the scientists on this research project says, every centimeter of sea level rise means about 1 million people will be displaced from their low-lying homelands. And then this article also talks about the fact that as this ice is melting, it's reducing the planet's ability to reflect solar radiation back into space. And I think that is the Arctic amplification that we had talked about with one of our guests a couple weeks ago. So those are all, right, like pretty unfortunate news headlines, but they bring me into this next one, which is from the New York Times. And it is that climate is taking on a growing role for voters, research suggests. Concern about global warming is steady despite other crises, a survey found, and the number of voters who are deeply engaged on the issue is rising sharply. So a lot of social scientists would actually have predicted a different result. There's a theory in psychology called the finite pool of worry, meaning that we can kind of only juggle so many crises at a time before we run out of worry for them. Suggests that when people's level of concern about one issue rises, concern about another issues fall. And climate change, under such thinking, has appeared to be a luxury good in the past, meaning that it's nice, you know, you can worry about it when you can afford to worry about it, but when other things like perhaps a pandemic come along, it gets pushed down the list.
That's a really interesting way to frame it, a luxury good.
Yeah. But the survey is suggesting otherwise. It's saying that even with all the other things that 2020 has thrown at us, climate is still holding steady as like a major issue in people's minds. So that's kind of positive.
Yeah, in a weird way, that is super positive. I mean, I think it's really from a perspective of what affects things the most and what will continue to affect things the most. In the background, climate change is literally going to be cooking, right? Like it's going to be cooking in the background, whether we're paying attention or not. And so, and it will change a lot of things. So the more kind of voter attention on it is probably a good thing, at least to have an informed populace about what's happening. Yeah. And
then our final story is not directly related to climate change, but it is positive, which is, I like to throw one of those in there. This is from the BBC News.
Whoa,
Africa declared free of wild polio.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, polio usually affects children under 5, sometimes leading to irreversible paralysis. Death can occur when breathing muscles are affected. There is no cure, but the polio vaccine protects children for life. And as of this, the writing of this, more than 95% of Africa's population has been immunized. And that was one of the conditions for this independent body, the Africa Regional Certification Commission. They set that condition before declaring the continent free from wild polio. So that's really cool.
Yes. Sorry, it's absolutely cool. I was trying to get another link pulled up.
Oh, no worries.
And then it's only located in 2 other countries. You said Afghanistan and Pakistan?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what that one says. So that's what
it's always risky. It's always risky to scroll down on these web pages. I'm always hesitant because then you never know what ad is going to be on the right side.
Right.
Yeah, that is a wonderful thing to end on.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you had that as the final news note. Okay, and without further ado, we should probably bring our guest on.
Let's do it.
Okay, are you ready? Ready? Guest? Thumbs up, guest? Oh, boom. Okay. Ready, set, go. Okay, so without further ado, we welcome Dr. Erin Dougherty to the call, to the broadcast.
Thanks for having me, Micah and Pat. Good to see you guys.
Of course. And did I say your name right, Erin Dougherty?
You did. You're actually one of the few people who say it right. Everyone has their own preferred way of saying it, so kudos to that.
We may have practiced beforehand. We don't know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I can't take the credit. I think we said we're going to have such and such as a guest, and we had our pronunciation corrected. And And then, so now we have the correct pronunciation.
Well, I appreciate that.
Okay, so Dr. Erin Dougherty, I realized that happened very recently, right? That happened, what, in the last year?
Yeah, that actually happened, when was it? Almost 2 months ago, like exactly. So yeah, I'm still getting used to the doctor term, which is, I mean, it's pretty awesome, right? But it's still weird. Yeah. It's just weird hearing people call me doctor.
You're like,
right. Like, wait.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That doesn't go away, by the way.
Good to know.
But okay, so you're not in, are you still in Fort Collins, or what's the?
No, so I'm in Boulder now.
Yeah.
Even though, so I got my PhD from the CSU Department of Atmospheric Science.
You should probably do like a little background, like, who are you? Hello,
okay,
welcome.
yeah, I can do that as I'm talking right now. So I got my PhD, at CSU in the Department of Atmospheric Science. So I was working with Kristen Rasmussen, looking at changes in storms that produce floods in a current and future climate. And actually just this week, I started my new job. So again, lots of major life changes, which is exciting. So I started my new job as a postdoctoral fellow at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, which is why I am now in Boulder, even though I am still working remotely for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, these types of changes happening during this time, right, are just kind of like totally bonkers, you know? Like you expect to be going to some prestigious, location and working at this cool lab, and then you're kind of like, okay, I'm working from home.
Yeah, like not too much change in the scenery, but a bit of a change in the people I interact with. So at least that's some switch up to the daily routine, which is nice.
And then which group are you working with in Boulder?
So I'm in the Research Applications Lab at NCAR. They do a lot of different things. So some of it is looking at, changes in microphysics schemes and a lot of like model development. The group I'm in is called the Computational Hydrology group within that specific lab at NCAR. And so they do a lot of hydrologic work, and a lot of it is focused on how is the hydrology changing in a future warmer climate. That's a lot of the emphasis right now. So they've done things before, like looking at changes in the water cycle in the Colorado headwaters region, which we know is super important for our water supply. Things like that, looking at changes in hurricanes in a future climate. So tie back to Hurricane Laura there. So that's really where I'll be, and I'll be working on looking at how hydrologic extremes change in a warmer climate, and looking at potentially flood risk and how that affects society as well.
So that kind of brings us to what we're going to talk about today a little bit. And that is, you did a lot of your PhD work on thinking about how storms might change in the future, extreme precipitation events. And you did that work with Professor Kristen Rasmussen.
Yes.
And so I guess if you had to give like an elevator message to somebody about how is extreme precipitation going to change in the future, what would be sort of your kind of 2-minute spiel, do you think?
Right. Yeah. So we looked at nearly 600 storms that produce floods in the current climate, like their historical floods. So take your, Boulder or Colorado floods of 2013, put it in a future warmer and moister climate, and look at the changes. So we did that for 600 floods all over the US using some really detailed simulations that can actually characterize some of these extreme precipitation changes. And the main takeaway is that we are seeing, not only increases in the precipitation, so the actual accumulated rainfall that's on the surface, we saw increase on average by 20% in the future climate over the US.
That seems like a ton.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, other studies have found, similar sorts of increases. But what's interesting about our work is we're looking at the individual storms, not just like hourly precipitation. We're looking at actual storms. And so we can say, how do specific storms change in the future? And then what would that look like? So in addition to seeing more of that accumulated rainfall, we're also seeing increases in runoff of about 50%. So runoff just being, the amount of water that's just running off the surface from these really intense storms. And so some of that is tied to, more intense rain rates. And so when you have more intense rain rates, it's unable to actually infiltrate into the ground. And so it ends up becoming runoff. So the takeaway is, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No. Takeaway.
Yeah. Takeaway, more intense storms that produce floods, not only in the precipitation, but also the runoff. So there's that hydrologic impact as well.
I was gonna ask, like, with the hydrologic impact. So in terms of the runoff, did you guys have to think about how, like, the landscape would change at all, or does that get worked in, or like in the sense that cities might be bigger and there might be like more concrete in places, or does that not come into this sort of analysis?
Yeah, that wasn't included in this analysis, just because if you start changing everything, then you're like, what is the actual signal here?
Absolutely. Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So we didn't look at that, but yeah, that would definitely have a huge effect on, what sort of runoff and hydrologic impacts you would see.
So I guess that was part of what you did for your PhD. Now, are you going to try and keep working on a similar kind of focus of your research? Or are you going to kind of move in a new direction now that you're with the Research Applications Lab?
Yeah, good question. So I'm trying to get more into hydrology, which is why I'm in the computational hydrology group. These people really know hydrology, which is great. And that's one of the things that I really want to understand better is, I'm trained in atmospheric science, and we're looking at these storms, how the precipitation changes. But what I want to do during my postdoc is to get a more detailed understanding of the changes in hydrology. So looking at things like the changes in stream flow, the changes in groundwater, inundated water depth, you can get when you actually couple this to hydrologic models. And so
what's that? What's inundated water depth?
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, sorry. So define that. Inundated water depth is like, it's like if you're in a city, let's take like Hurricane Laura. I mean, how much water is there actually just pooling on the land surface? Which, I mean, I think that's what most people think about when they think about flooding, is how much just like standing water is there. And then, how high, what is the depth of that? Would it inundate a car? Would it inundate a building? So I think that's actually the next step, is to take these precipitation changes and then link them to, what are people going to see, in the land surface response and the hydrologic response.
You can go around Fort Collins and see those high water markers of like where the water was standing during those floods.
That's like exactly what the inundated water depth is. And that's super important if you're, like along Spring Creek in Fort Collins, like during the flood, they moved where they put certain buildings and they have, floodplain now. So it's really important to understand that and how it could change in a future warmer climate.
Okay, so I'm just going to pivot a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're pretty good at explaining your science. It's almost as though you've received some sort of, I don't know, training in communication or something like that. Did you have any involvement with SoGES while you were at CSU?
Your hunch is spot on. I don't know how you knew that. So I was in the Sustainability Leadership Fellows program when was that? Gosh, that feels like forever ago. I guess that was 2018 to 2019.
I don't think it was that long ago. But everything before March feels like, honestly, a different, who knows what.
In the before times.
Exactly. Yeah. So I did that training, a couple of years ago. So we had the whole like media training and talking to journalists, which was super intimidating, but very helpful. So yeah, it's sort of something I'm trying to develop too as I move forward as a postdoc.
And so as a postdoc at NCAR, so you have, what is it? It's the ASP postdoc, right?
Yes, that's right.
And what does that stand for?
Advanced Studies Postdoctoral Fellowship.
Gotcha.
And it's a fairly prestigious postdoc. It's specifically for NCAR. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
And so do you have like a cohort of other postdocs or that you are all ASP fellows, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure on the number. I want to say each year there's about 10 incoming ASP fellows. Since I just started on Monday, I'm still learning who people are and their names. So there's
and the fact that you can't actually be there, you're not like getting coffee with your fellow fellows.
I can't see my fellow fellows, so that's a bummer. So there's a group of us, and everyone's in different labs. So like someone I know is in the mesoscale, and I'm actually not sure the third. It's called M cubed, so there's 3 M's, and I'm blanking on the third M. But he's in there like studying hurricanes, and so there's people from like all over like the country and the world who like come to do this fellowship and learn from like the really brilliant scientists at NCAR.
So I was a postdoc typically lasts. How long does the ASP last? 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
Okay, so are you? Some people who get into this field are going to stay in academia. They really want to understand and keep going with kind of the research science side of things. Are you thinking that's probably where you'll end up? Do you have any idea, or because I know sometimes in the SLF program, the Sustainable Leadership Fellows program here at CSU, sometimes people say, "Oh, you know what? Maybe I am interested in like policy or something else." So, do you have a sense of the kind of trajectory that you're on?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to stay at NCAR. I'd love to be a research scientist, and especially the lab I'm working in is awesome. So it's the Research Applications Lab, which I love because a lot of their projects they're actually directly working with like the civil engineers and different stakeholders. So I think that's really cool to sort of have that public partnership with people who are really interested in like knowing, how should we update our dams to account for maybe more rainfall in a future climate? And that's actually something that my lab has actually done or is working on. And so I think that really is an important part of what I want to do is like working with stakeholders and actually, doing applied sciences. So yeah, I'd love to stay in that lab, definitely.
That's actually really cool. Sorry, go Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, what are some important things when you're like communicating with experts, but in different fields, right?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. So I learned actually during my time at CSU, it's really difficult. So I did a project with a civil engineer he does like a lot of like floodplain mapping. So looking at the configuration of floodplains and then how does the water move? So more of that like detailed hydrology and like an understanding of like dams and water regulation, just stuff that that's not my background at all. And it was really funny because we were excited, like telling him about these new simulations. We're like, oh, they're like super high resolution. They're 4 kilometers. And he looks at us and laughs at us being excited by like a 4 kilometer resolution, because for hydrologists, that's like pretty coarse.
You're like, don't laugh at us.
Yeah, we were like,
excited.
wait, what? So that was like a huge challenge, is to be like, different fields have different definitions of like what is good or what is like cutting edge, and are working on different like spatial scales. So it's like hard to sort of come between those different scales and find like a common ground. So yeah, definitely.
And that's between civil engineers and atmospheric scientists, right?
Yep.
You know, they're talking about grid resolutions of their models.
Yeah.
Like, let alone somebody who doesn't use models.
Right. Yeah. I mean, talking to like stakeholders, which like, you know, is something I want to do more with. I mean, for them, it's more the bottom line of like, well, how much is this going to increase for a particular region in California or Colorado? Like, can you tell me the duration of, you know? So that's hard too, to just give a precise answer when a scientist, a lot of times it's like, well, it could be between this range and it's fairly uncertain. So
and they're not terribly interested in your 4 kilometer models.
No,
very enthusiasm
really
for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I think about that. I do a lot of stuff with various grid resolutions, and I think about like, what is, like, if I were to try and like drop that here, you know, 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers of a box, a little square, and I imagined like how big that space is, or whatever. I use things that are like hilariously bigger than that. So it's like, you know, whatever, 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers, which is nonsense. But then it's like, how do you make sense of that with somebody who, you know, they don't think about models, they don't think about resolutions, they think about, you know, I will know how much water is actually going to be here, and communicating like how a model is a representation of a possible world, and then but we exist in the real world. And I acknowledge and totally am with you in terms of the challenge of communicating kind of model worlds to communities of people that don't exist in those worlds.
Yeah, I mean, model worlds definitely. Even if you're in science, if you're not dealing with models, I feel like it's hard to understand until you get your hands dirty. So yeah, I agree with that.
That's true. So stepping out of sort of this academic discussion, what are you doing for fun right now to try and stay sane? I mean, you've moved to Boulder, you just started a new job. What are you doing? Are you like, do you try and go hiking? Like, what are you doing to stay sane during this time?
Yeah, a lot of outdoor time.
That's great.
Boulder's awesome for that, because the trails are right there. Like, I can ride my bike and be at the trailhead. So yeah, a lot of trail running, which has been super nice. Some backpacking thrown in there. So yeah, mostly outdoor things. And then I'm getting back into like baking, like the start of COVID. Each week was like a different bread, and it's now that it's like getting cooler again, I'm like, okay, I think I need to step up like the bread game again. So getting back.
Not desserts though, like not like pies and cakes or.
Well, I've done some banana breads, so like that kind of straddles, you know.
That's like a dessert bread.
Yeah, exactly. So like some of that, but mostly just like focaccia bread, or just like a lot of like just different types of like the no-knead breads, or I mean, pretzel bites. Those are pretty fun. So yeah.
Have you ever made naan?
Oh yeah, I made a lot of naan earlier. Naan was fun.
Is that hard?
It's really, no, it's not at all. Okay. I felt like the hardest part was just getting it to like look somewhat reasonable in terms of its shape, which I kind of gave up on after a while.
The shape doesn't, as long as it tastes great.
It was delicious. So highly recommend trying it.
So you would say it's a non-hard bread?
Naan is a non-hard bread. You got it.
I'm muting you, Pat.
Do you have control to mute me? That would be perfect.
I think I do.
Can you?
Oh yeah. I just did it.
You just muted me. That's great. That's good to know. Not that I'll ever use it, but because I can't even mute myself.
You have to go back to kindergarten.
That's right. Full circle. So I guess I sort of already asked this question in terms of what are you doing, you know, to stay busy and stay sane right now. But sort of the last question, do you have any closing thoughts I should ask? Or Micah, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, anything we didn't touch on that is important.
Yeah, that we should touch on.
Can't think of anything.
So the last question though that we try and ask our guests on the show is, what's one really kind of cool or good thing that's happened during the pandemic, more or less, since like March-ish, that maybe it doesn't have to be work related or anything like that, just like kind of a positive thing that's happened?
Yeah, well, I guess sort of a big thing, like I got engaged, so like that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so like, yeah, I joke with my fiance, we're like, 2020, like not everything, but there's a lot of just like bad things happening. But it's like, okay, well, remember, like there's a super big highlight in there of getting engaged. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's like the best one I think we've had on the show, isn't it?
I think that's definitely like the biggest one for sure.
That's definitely the biggest one for sure.
Sweet.
Well, okay, so Erin, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It was awesome to hear about what you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
And I hope, and we will continue to follow what you're doing. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll check back in a few years and see how your research is going.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, hopefully by then, things are a little bit more bright and sunny in the world. But
yes,
you'll be in an office somewhere.
Yeah, we'll be in an office, but we have you have your at-home kindergarten, and there's breads to be made. So I guess we'll just keep doing that in the meantime.
There are breads to be made.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dr. Erin.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was about to apologize for that pun, but I'm not going to apologize.
Don't do it.
No.
Don't do it. You lean into that. Lean into that.
I'm going to lean into it. And I have to say that about 99% of the puns that I make are completely unintentional. And it's like, I say something and they're like, oh, and I was like, what? They're like, that was a terrible pun. And I was like, it was a pun. I didn't even realize. I'm just terrible. Okay.
That one seemed intentional though. That one seems
when I am aware of one, I definitely lean in.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we should wrap up the show, right?
We should. I've got a couple of SoGES related items for you here.
Okay.
The first is that if you are in undergrad at CSU looking to minor in sustainability, we have a bunch of options for you. And our academic coordinator, Professor Dale Lockwood, is super tech savvy. And he actually has set up a Calendly platform. It's this platform where you just go in and then you schedule yourself for a 15-minute advising session. So you don't have to call anyone. You don't have to email anyone. You just go in there and do that. And so if you go to the education page on our website, you can go in there and sign yourself up for it's at the very bottom next to his signature.
So you go to education, click on the education tab, then you go down here.
Yep. And it's that last link right there.
Right there.
So yeah, easy ways to make appointments. And then I think that signs you up for like a 15-minute video session slot where you can get some advising from our very own Dale Lockwood.
There you go.
And then also we want to give a shout out to our director, Diana Wall. She co-authored a paper published in the Proceedings, the National Academy of Sciences, which is a really big deal. And then also to Alan Knapp in the biology department. And Diana is also a professor in the biology department. On the same day, had a research article also published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So 2 pubs from the biology department and 1 in a prestigious journal on the same day. That's pretty cool. So congratulations to them. And
those
that's
are cool. I'll check those out.
Yeah.
Are those going to be on the links?
They will. Yes.
Okay.
Those will be on the links, and then all the news articles we mentioned today will be there as well. So you can read the actual research articles, and then Source did a nice write-up on Alan Knapp's one about the Dust Bowl. And that's got some nice like narrative around it, which is cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, We made it through, well, I don't know. Nothing changed for me really, but a lot of people made it through the first academic week of the semester.
Right.
So
congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations to all of you.
Not what you expected, probably, for the first week of school, especially freshmen.
Mm-hmm. But we're doing what we got to do.
We're doing what we got to do.
We got to make that bread.
I got to make that bread. Got to teach that kindergarten. I shouldn't say that. Got to assist the teacher who's actually the kindergarten teacher.
The kindergarten. Facilitate. You need to facilitate kindergarten.
And actually, I have to say, sorry, I know I should stop talking about it, but I can't. Kindergarten teachers are wizards. Okay, like aside from the fact, like in a classroom, you can see the wizardry, but like when you're there and it's like Zoom, it's like a Zoom call with like 15 little kids. Mm-hmm. It's just like how in the world an adult can't control other adults, let alone controlling and making it work with all these little kids. But it was just cool. It was cool.
But
they're doing a great. Yeah, the Poudre School District teachers I think they're doing a great job.
Very good.
Anyway,
I think that's all we got for today.
And that's all we got. And we don't know who our guest is going to be. We're trying to figure out who the guest is going to be for the next show, but we'll make sure if you sign up for the newsletter, we'll make sure you get that information. Then we'll advertise it on all the social media platforms. All the platforms.
All right.
Is that it?
I think so. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.